Hello and welcome to the Monday live session for September 8th. Today we're going to go over this week's assignments, information you can focus on, and of course my concerns based on some things I saw last week. Alright, so this week our topic is going to be healthy pregnancies, so this kind of builds on what we talked about last week with pregnancy prevention. So if someone were to become pregnant, what would be the best decisions for them to make? And we're not talking about like whether to keep it or not, or to go for adoption. We're talking about how to take care of your body if you're pregnant. Your assignment this week will be to write a letter to a pretend friend who's found out they are pregnant. And this person knows that you're taking this class and you're learning about how to stay healthy during pregnancy. So she wants you to tell her what you know. And we'll look at that journal entry a little closer in just a minute. And then the other assignment for this week is just to get caught up on previous week's works. The end of this week will be progress reports. So I figured maybe lightening the workload this week a little would help some of you who are behind get caught up so that your progress report isn't completely awful. We did have some late starts, and that's kind of taken a toll on some of those grades. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to kind of get the best grade that you can before I have to release those reports. So you've only got one assignment this week that's due, and then the rest of the week I expect you to work on other assignments, whether it means that you need to improve the ones that you've turned in or actually complete them for the first time. All right, so as you read your chapter this week, it'd be good to take some notes on the information, and that will help you when you have to go write this letter to your friend. So as you read, you're going to read about nutrition, and you want to make notes about the specific nutrients that women need when they're pregnant, because certain vitamins and minerals help the baby develop. And obviously, when you're pregnant, your body will automatically give the nutrients to the baby, and it takes them from the woman. So if you're a woman, to keep yourself healthy, you need to make sure that you take these vitamins that we talk about in the chapter. Otherwise, you're going to be deficient because your body will give the vitamins to the baby before it gives it to you. All right, you need to make sure you take some notes about the type of medical care that women should get when they're pregnant. We want to talk about or focus on the toxins, how specific drugs and alcohol can harm the fetus. So you'll see a website and it goes over a list of drugs and how it will affect the fetus. So you want to make sure you understand that. And you want to make sure you take some notes about the consequences, effects, and dangers of teenage pregnancy, which we went over that a little bit last week, but we're going to focus more on that this week. All right, so for this assignment, when you write this letter, when I read it, I'm going to be looking for 4 traits. If I don't see these traits, then I'm going to ask you to work on it more, and you won't get the best grade. So I'm going to look and make sure that you accurately describe the key nutrients that women need to consume during pregnancy. I'm going to make sure that you describe the risks and complications of teen pregnancy. I'll make sure that you describe the risk of using drugs during pregnancy or drinking alcohol. And I'm going to make sure that you explained the medical options that your friend would have to get care during her pregnancy. So if you can take notes about these things as you read, when you go to write your letter and give this pretend friend advice about those 4 areas, you're going to get a much better grade, and hopefully that will be less work for you in the long run. You won't have to redo anything. All right, so that was this week's assignment. And like I said, you only have one assignment this week. Typically, you'll have 2 to 3 assignments. So just be aware of that. It's not normally going to be one assignment a week. But with the combination of obstacles we've had with enrollment and some students being behind, I think it's better just to kind of have a lull right now, and hopefully we won't need another lull again because I don't know if I'll be able to afford it. Okay, so concerns. Make sure that your email is added in Blackboard. If you don't put your email in Blackboard, I can't send you alerts that you're missing work or that you need to be revised. Hopefully you would be keeping track of that yourself with your grades, but it's also helpful to hear it from your teacher. And I have over 350 students right now, so it's pretty much, with grading and live classrooms and emails, it is pretty much impossible for me to go through and email every single person by looking up their email address, writing them a letter, and letting them know, I have to go through their grades and figure out what they're missing. When I have smaller classes, which I had last year, I can do that, but I can't do that this year. However, Blackboard does have a feature where if the student has their email in the system, I can put a check mark next to your name and press an email button. So I can select like 20, 30, 40, 50 students if I need to, all the students that are missing an assignment, click off a button, send you guys a message that says, you guys are missing this assignment, please get it turned in as fast as possible. And of course, that's just way more efficient. That's awesome, and I'd love to start doing that. But you've got to do your part and make sure your email address is in Blackboard. All right, also, the other issue that I was running into last week, make sure that you realize that each assignment has its own turn-in area. So I think what happened is some of you turned in your Who Am I assignment, and you thought that that was the only way to turn in an assignment. So you just kept on going back to the Who Am I assignment and submitting all of your work through the Who Am I assignment. The Who Am I assignment discussion board in week 1 is only for Who Am I. So we don't want to put other assignments in there. The problem is when you submit the wrong assignment to the wrong place, I don't have any way of giving you the grade on that assignment. I have to say, okay, make sure that you turn this in through the other folder. It's located in week 2 or week 3. And I have to hope that you get that message. So I'm letting you guys know now, if you turn it into the wrong folder, I can't give you a grade on it. You're going to have to resubmit it to the right area. And, just to continue on that, the grading system doesn't allow me to move the assignment for you. I guess the best way to see if this is happening is always check your feedback on assignments. So, and also if you go through your grade book, like if you've turned in your journal from last week, but it's not showing in your grade book, it still says upcoming, then that partly means you submitted it in the wrong spot. So that's another way you can watch for it. The other concern I have is progress reports do come out this week. So definitely start paying attention to your feedback and making sure you don't have any comments asking you to do a little bit more. A lot of times the difference between getting, full credit and half credit for an assignment is just an extra 5 minutes of work. So a lot of the times you guys can fix those assignments easy and get full credit. All right. My other big concern is the brochure assignment from last week. I don't really know what happened with this one, but it got misinterpreted big time. Mainly the biggest misinterpretation was a lot of students turned it in as like a 1-page poster. And it's a brochure, so it's technically like 6 short pages. Brochures, if you're not familiar with what they are, if you ever go to like a gas station and you see like their travel section where it's got all these little pamphlets that tell you about the places you're going to visit, those are brochures. So a brochure is kind of like a miniature book. It's got a little bit of information on every single page, and it's typically one big piece of paper that's folded up to make 6 different pages. You can make brochures using the website that I linked to. There's a web-based brochure maker, and that worked perfectly. I played around with that, and I thought it was probably the best one for this class. But say that web-based brochure maker doesn't work for you. You can Google web-based brochure makers and see if there's a better one that you prefer. My only requirement is that you need to be able to save the work to a file on your hard drive so that you can upload it into Blackboard. And the file needs to be a PDF. If it's not a PDF, it's not going to let me see it, and it's going to make it very complicated to grade it. So for the sake of my time and ease, please make sure you're submitting PDFs. In some cases, like if it's just a regular assignment, then normally it's okay to turn in a document file or a PowerPoint file. Those two are easily converted to where I can view them in Blackboard. The oddball files, like publisher files, Macintosh files, I can't view those in Blackboard, so I'd have to ask you to submit them as a PDF. In journals, discussions, and blogs, if we have any blogs, you'd have to submit it as either an image file or a PDF file. It won't make it to where I can view the documents or even PowerPoints. So I know it's confusing, and 2 or 3 weeks from now, it should be second nature to you. I just have to keep on reminding you guys until you get it. But make sure, by default, if you're not sure, just submit it as a PDF. And if you go to my blog, I do have a how-to on how to make PDFs in there. All right, so with this brochure, besides the fact that it was supposed to be a brochure and a lot of it, what was turned in was like a poster, you needed to explain 3 ways to prevent pregnancy. You also had to list the pros and cons of each of those 3 ways. And you had to explain the consequences and risks of teenage pregnancy. So how does it physically affect teens, mentally affect teens, and socially affect teens? Now the key word is teen pregnancy. We're not talking about pregnancy in general. And we'll talk about this more in a second. Let me show you some examples of student work. And if this is your assignment that I'm showing the class, your names are not on it. It's completely anonymous. I apologize for using you as an example, but it's for the benefit of the class and hopefully you as well. All right, so here is this is one style of brochure that was turned in. And I'd say I had a good 30 assignments that were similar to this. So if you have something that looks like this, we need to work on this more. And over here, I've just kind of got like a rubric. The way that I go through and grade things, I ask these questions. Does this explain 3 ways of preventing pregnancy? And as you can see, no, it does not. Does this explain the consequences of teenage pregnancy? And it does not. Does this list pros and cons of each of the methods of prevention? No, it does not. Is it a brochure? No. So this type of assignment would get a 0 because it didn't hit any of the requirements for the assignment. If you get a 0 on it, you can keep working on it. It's fine, but I can't give you a grade or any points unless you at least get some of these over here. Here's an example of one that got 50%. So they got half credit. And this was turned in a style of like a PowerPoint, but I just kind of took screenshots of each of the slides and so they'd fit on one screen here. But you can see they talked about ways to prevent pregnancy. They just listed them. They talked about some complications, and they've got some pros and cons, or just pros actually. So we go through my checklist. Does this explain 3 ways to prevent pregnancy? It lists 3 ways, but it didn't explain them. So maybe define them or talk about how they stop you from becoming pregnant. Like using a condom is a barrier. It stops the sperm from entering the lady parts, so it doesn't go through the fallopian tube and eventually up into the ovaries. So I'm looking for information about them to demonstrate that you understand what they are. You don't have to talk about, body parts or anything that make you uncomfortable, but just explain how they work. Birth control uses hormones to stop your body from ovulating, and it makes the eggs to where they won't accept sperm, basically. And then abstinence, of course, that's a little easier to explain, and that's where you just choose not to have sex at all. So this didn't explain 3 ways of preventing pregnancy. It did list them, so that's kind of like a partial credit situation. It explained some consequences, but it wasn't specific to teens. Like, the consequences that are listed here are just kind of general and could apply to anybody that's pregnant. Anytime you're pregnant, you could die. It's part of a reality. And anytime you're pregnant, the baby could have complications. It doesn't matter if you're 15 years old, 20 years old, or 30 years old, or 60 years old. It could have complications, and the baby could die in any of those cases. So we want to focus on the consequences of teenage pregnancy, especially how it physically affects the teenager's body, how it mentally affects the teenager's body, and that can go for dad or mom. Dad can get stressed out too from pregnancies. And socially, how does it affect you socially? And socially, it isn't like talking to other people. Socially is like your place in the world. How does this limit you in what you can do? And then the other category was methods, going over the pros and cons. And this person just went over the pros. They didn't really talk about any cons. And this is not a brochure. It's actually a presentation, which you'll see that's not the worst thing in the world here in just a second. This is a presentation that was given pretty high grade. It wasn't a perfect grade, but it was up there. So you see that she's got resources here about what to do if you're pregnant, and I blocked out a lot of her answers because it is a assignment that got a good grade, so I wouldn't want anybody to copy off of it. So the content is blacked out. But she talked about the pros of using a condom. She didn't really explain what the condom did, but in this case, because she was so detailed, it's okay not to be that detailed there, or explain it as long as you're detailed in your descriptions and pros and cons. Through her pros and cons, you kind of understand that she knows how a condom prevents a pregnancy. All right, so she summarized ways to prevent it. She talks about the cons, and then I've got another page here that shows the rest. She talks about the pros and cons of using birth control, just the pros of staying abstinent, and I suppose there's not any concrete cons about being abstinent. And then there's complications of teenage pregnancy, and she did describe those. A few of them were not specific to teens, but a couple of them were, so she got credit for it. So in a nutshell with this one, did she explain 3 ways to prevent teenage pregnancy? Not technically, but through her pros and cons, it shows me that she understands how those methods prevent them. Does this explain the consequences? Yes, she explained the consequences or complications. And did it list the pros and cons? Yes, she did very good on her pros and cons. And was it a brochure? Actually, it was not. She did this as a presentation. However, it was organized like a brochure, so I let that slide. A lot of things, as long as I can say pretty much yes, kinda to these, you'll get a decent grade. But if it's no or not really, then I could only give you like half credit or no credit. So I hope that kind of clarifies how to do that assignment, and that you'll get some time this week to go back through and revise it. And at the very least, I hope it gives some of you a better idea of what I'm expecting. This week's password for your quiz is progress reports. Make sure you enter it exactly as it is here. You have to have the S on the end of reports, and you're going to need that capital P. I hope you all have a good week, and we'll have a class Thursday if you have any questions.